The rain had a rhythm to it, steady, insistent, the kind that Austin only saw a few times a year when the sky decided to crack open and wash everything clean. Or try to, anyway. Some stains went deeper than weather could reach. Evan Brooks understood that better than most. He stood on Congress Avenue, halfway between the bar where his former classmates celebrated futures he'd been denied and the apartment where his eviction notice waited like a patient execution. 24 years old, summa cum laude, drowning in potential that no one wanted to actualize. The whiskey in his hand had gone lukewarm. He'd bought it with the last comfortable money in his account, a choice that felt both defiant and pathetic. Around him, the city hummed with Friday night energy, couples laughing under shared umbrellas, groups of friends bar hopping, the endless parade of people whose lives seemed to fit together in ways his refused to. Inside the Sterling Lounge, he could see them through rain-streaked glass. His graduating class. The ones who'd landed consulting positions, tech startups, family business VP roles. They'd worked hard, sure, but they'd also had safety nets woven from connections, internships at daddy's firm, introductions that opened doors before resumes even landed on desks. Evan had worked harder. It hadn't mattered. Not the right cultural fit, they'd said at the investment firm where he'd aced 3 rounds of interviews. Translation: your lack of a country club membership shows. We're looking for someone with more polish, the startup had said. Translation: we hired the CEO's nephew instead. Overqualified, said everyone else. Translation: you make us uncomfortable because you earned everything and we can't control you. He took another sip of cheap bourbon and let the bitterness settle. This was rock bottom, he supposed. Jobless, nearly homeless, watching through windows at lives he'd never be invited into. And then he heard the screaming. Chapter 1. The voice cut through the rain like shattered crystal, sharp, imperious, and entirely certain of its own righteousness. This is unacceptable. Do you people even understand the concept of basic competence? Evan turned toward the sound. Across the street, beneath the awning of an upscale valet service, a woman in a dress that probably cost more than his rent was berating a young attendant. Even from a distance, he recognized her. Vivian Ashford. Austin's tabloid darling. Heiress to the Ashford commercial real estate empire. 23 years old and famous for exactly nothing except being born rich and looking good doing it. The society pages loved her, the business section ignored her, the gossip blogs thrived on her. Tonight she was furious about something, a scratch on her car, a delayed service, some microscopic inconvenience that wouldn't even register to normal people. The attendant, a girl who couldn't have been more than 19, stood there soaked and trembling, apologizing over and over. Evan felt something inside him snap. Maybe it was the whiskey. Maybe it was the unfairness of watching someone with everything treat someone with nothing like garbage. Maybe it was just that he'd spent too long being polite to people who didn't deserve it, swallowing his pride for interviews that led nowhere, smiling through rejections from people half as capable as him. Whatever it was, his feet moved before his brain caught up. "Excuse me," he said, voice cutting through the rain. Vivian turned, irritation sharpening her already severe expression. Up close, she was even more striking than her photos suggested, high cheekbones, ice blue eyes, the kind of beauty that came from generations of genetic lottery wins and expensive skincare. She looked at him the way someone might look at a particularly persistent insect. "Can I help you?" Her tone suggested that helping him was the last thing she intended to do. "Do you ever get tired?" Evan asked. "I'm sorry." "Of hearing yourself yell at people who work harder in a day than you have in your entire life." The attendant gasped. The valet supervisor froze mid-step. Even the rain seemed to pause. Vivian's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" "Vivian Ashford," Evan said calmly. "Daughter of Richard Ashford, trustafarian, professional party attendee, and according to the Herald's Society column, an icon of modern elegance. Though I'm not seeing much elegance right now. Mostly just entitlement." Her mouth opened, then closed. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, she appeared genuinely speechless. Evan turned to the attendant. "You okay?" The girl nodded frantically, eyes wide with shock and something like awe. He turned back to Vivian. "You were born into advantages most people spend their whole lives working toward. Money, connections, education, opportunities. And this is what you do with them. Make minimum wage workers cry because your perfect life has a microscopic scratch in it. You don't know anything about my life, Vivian said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I know enough, Evan replied. I know you've never had to earn anything. Never been told no. Never had to choose between rent and food, or wonder if your degree was worth the debt, or watch people less qualified get opportunities because they knew the right last names. He stepped closer, rain dripping from his hair. You want to know what real power looks like? It's not yelling at people who can't fight back. It's using what you have to make things better instead of worse. But that would require actual character, wouldn't it? The silence that followed was absolute. Vivian stared at him, face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes, not anger, but something raw. Shame, maybe. Or recognition. Then her chauffeur appeared, murmuring something about her father waiting, and the moment shattered. She turned without another word and swept toward the waiting car, dignity wounded but posture perfect. Evan exhaled slowly, adrenaline draining away and leaving exhaustion in its wake. That was stupid. Spectacularly, career-endingly stupid, if he'd had a career to end. Thank you, the attendant whispered. He managed a smile. She had it coming. What Evan didn't see, what he couldn't have seen as he turned away, was the men watching from the shadows of the building's entrance. Tall, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that cost more than most cars. Richard Ashford stood perfectly still, rain misting the edges of his coat, expression unreadable. But in his eyes, something gleamed. Interest. Calculation. And perhaps, just perhaps, a hint of approval. Chapter 2. The email arrived at 7:43 a.m. on Monday morning. Evan was 3 cups of coffee into his daily ritual of unemployment, scanning job boards, tweaking his resume for the 100th time, trying to convince himself that Friday night's confrontation wouldn't somehow come back to haunt him. The internet had been mercifully quiet about the incident. No viral videos, no trending hashtags, no social media manhunt. Just silence. Which was why the sender name made his heart stop. Richard Ashford. Ashford Holdings. Subject, a conversation worth having. His finger hovered over the delete button. This was either spam, a legal threat, or something worse. Rich people didn't just email random citizens who insulted their daughters. They had lawyers for that, PR teams, ways of making problems disappear. But curiosity, that old familiar weakness, won out. He opened it. Mr. Brooks. I believe we share a distaste for wasted potential and an appreciation for uncomfortable truths. I witnessed Friday's exchange outside the Sterling. Your assessment, while blunt, was not inaccurate. I have a proposition that may interest you. If you're not otherwise occupied, I'd appreciate a conversation. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Ashford Tower. Come prepared to be challenged. Richard Ashford. Evan read it 3 times. This was insane. This was a trap. This was possibly the only interesting thing that had happened to him in 6 months. He typed a response before he could talk himself out of it. Mr. Ashford. I'll be there. Evan Brooks. Chapter 3. Ashford Tower occupied 12 floors of downtown Austin's most prestigious address, all glass and steel and the quiet hum of serious money at work. The lobby alone was designed to intimidate, 40-foot ceilings, abstract art that probably cost 6 figures, a reception desk carved from a single slab of Italian marble. Evan wore his only good suit, 3 years old, slightly too tight across the shoulders now, but clean and pressed. He'd shaved carefully, rehearsed calm confidence in the mirror, and absolutely failed to control the nervous energy that made his hands want to fidget. The receptionist, impeccably professional, coolly beautiful, checked his name against a list and smiled with perfect corporate warmth. Mr. Ashford is expecting you. 12th floor, executive suite. The elevator requires a key card. She handed him a temporary badge. You'll surrender that on your way out. The ride up was smooth and silent. Elevator music had been replaced by absolute quiet, broken only by the soft chime at each floor. 3rd floor, marketing. 5th floor, legal. 9th floor, finance. Each level a universe of its own, insulated and efficient. 12th floor, Executive offices. The doors opened onto something that looked less like an office and more like a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Austin sprawling beneath them. The furniture was minimalist but expensive, all clean lines and natural materials. Everything whispered power without shouting it. A woman in her 50s, assistant, based on the tablet in her hands and the air of competent authority, greeted him with a nod. "Mr. Brooks. He's ready for you." She led him down a hallway lined with photographs, construction projects, ribbon cuttings, charity events. Richard Ashford appeared in many of them, always slightly apart from the crowd, always watching with those calculating eyes. The corner office was somehow both massive and intimate. One wall was entirely glass, offering a view that made the city feel like a model someone had built for display. The desk was surprisingly modest, dark wood, clean surface, only a laptop and a single photograph in a silver frame. And behind it, Richard Ashford himself. He looked exactly like his photos, early 60s, silver hair swept back, features that suggested Nordic ancestry somewhere in the family tree. But photos couldn't capture the intensity of his presence, the way he seemed to read you before you'd said a word, the sense that every gesture was calculated 3 moves ahead. "Mr. Brooks." He gestured to a chair. "Coffee. Water." "I'm fine, thank you." Evan sat, keeping his posture straight, hands relaxed. Richard studied him for a long moment. "You look nervous." "I am nervous. Billionaires don't usually summon people who insulted their daughters." A faint smile. "Most billionaires surround themselves with yes-men who tell them comfortable lies. I prefer uncomfortable truths." He leaned back. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Brooks. Not your resume, I've already read it. You. Who you are when no one's grading you." The question caught him off guard. "I'm someone who believes competence should matter more than connections." Bitter about something. "Several things," Evan admitted. "But mostly about watching people who coast get rewarded while people who work get overlooked." "You worked hard." "I did. And you have very little to show for it." "Not yet." Richard's smile widened slightly. "Good answer. Tell me, what did you see in my daughter Friday night?" Evan hesitated, weighing honesty against politeness. Honesty won. Someone who's never had to earn respect treating someone who earns it every day like they're worthless. "It made me angry." "Because you empathize with the powerless." "Because I've been powerless. And I know what it costs." Richard nodded slowly, as if Evan had just confirmed something. "Vivian has every advantage I could give her. Wealth, education, opportunities. But she lacks something money can't buy, perspective. She's never failed at anything, never been denied, never had to prove herself to anyone who didn't already know her last name. With respect, sir, that's not her fault. That's yours." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. But Richard didn't explode. Instead, he laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. "There it is. That backbone." He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. "You're right, of course. I built an empire and forgot to teach my daughter how to do the same. I gave her everything and in doing so, gave her nothing of value. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to hire you to fix it." Evan blinked. "I'm sorry. My daughter needs a complete lifestyle reconstruction. Someone to impose structure, accountability, and consequences on a life that's had none. Someone unafraid to challenge her, push back against her tantrums, and force her to become the person she's capable of being." Richard's gaze sharpened. "I want to hire you as her personal accountability manager." "That's..." Evan struggled for words. "That's the most insane job description I've ever heard. You'll have full control over her schedule, her budget, her social commitments. Design whatever system you think will work, rewards, penalties, structured development. She reports to you. You report to me." He named a salary that made Evan's head spin. 6-month contract, renewable based on measurable results. "She'll hate me." She already hates herself. She just doesn't know it yet. Evan sat back, mind racing. This was absurd. Impossible. A disaster waiting to happen. But it was also. The most interesting opportunity he'd ever been offered. "What makes you think I can do this?" he asked quietly. "Because you told her the truth when everyone else has spent years lying to her face. Because you're hungry enough to take risks but principled enough to do it right. And because," Richard smiled, "you're the first person in a decade who's looked at my daughter and seen wasted potential instead of dollar signs." Silence stretched between them. "If I say yes," Evan said slowly, "I do this my way. No interference, no overruling my decisions, no running to daddy when she doesn't like the rules." "Agreed. And if she actively sabotages the arrangement? Then you'll have to be clever enough to outmaneuver her. Consider it part of the job requirements." Evan laughed despite himself. This was insane. Absolutely, completely, career-endingly insane. "When do I start?" he asked. Chapter 4. Vivian Ashford's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of the Paramount Building, one of Austin's most exclusive addresses. The entryway alone was larger than Evan's entire apartment, all white marble, modern art, and that particular kind of emptiness that came from having too much space and too little life to fill it. She was waiting for him in what the floor plan probably called a great room, floor-to-ceiling windows, furniture that looked sculptural rather than comfortable, everything arranged to impress rather than invite. She stood by the windows, backlit by afternoon sun, wearing casual luxury, designer jeans, a silk blouse, heels that added 3 inches to her already considerable height. When she turned and saw him, her expression went from curious to furious in half a second. "You. Good morning, Miss Ashford. What the hell are you doing in my apartment? Your father hired me. I'm your new," he paused, enjoying this more than he probably should, "accountability manager." The color drained from her face, then returned in an angry flush. "My what? Think of me as a life coach. With authority." He set his briefcase on the pristine glass coffee table. "We need to discuss your new schedule." "Get out." "Can't do that. Employment contract, signed by your father. Who, I should mention, controls your trust fund, your credit cards, and this apartment's lease." Her hands clenched into fists. "This is kidnapping. This is illegal. It's employment. And leverage. You're free to leave any time you want. But if you do, the money stops." He pulled out his laptop. "Now, shall we talk about the points system?" "The what?" "The points system. It's how we're going to measure your progress toward becoming an actual contributing member of society instead of a tabloid punchline." Her voice went dangerously quiet. "You're going to regret this. Maybe. But I've been broke, jobless, and rejected by every worthwhile employer in this city. Whatever you throw at me, I've survived worse." For a long moment, they stared at each other, 2 people on opposite sides of an unbridgeable divide, suddenly locked together by circumstances neither had chosen. Then Vivian smiled, and it was absolutely terrifying. "You think you know struggle," she said softly. "Wait until you try to control someone who has nothing left to lose." "Miss Ashford," Evan replied calmly, "you have everything to lose. That's the entire point." Chapter 5. Evan spent the weekend building the framework that would govern the next 6 months. He approached it like the management consulting problem he'd studied in school: identify key metrics, establish baselines, create feedback loops, design incentive structures. The point system, as he came to call it, operated on 3 principles. 1. Everything has consequences. Actions that demonstrated responsibility, growth, or genuine contribution earned points. Waste, excess, or cruelty cost points. The tally was public, updated daily on a shared dashboard that her father could monitor. 2. Privileges are earned, not assumed. Her credit cards, social calendar, even her car access, everything was tiered based on point totals. Drop below thresholds, and luxuries disappeared until she earned them back. 3. The only person she competed against was herself. This wasn't about humiliation or comparison. It was about progress. Every week, she'd need to improve on the previous week's baseline. Stagnation cost points. Growth earned them. He presented the system Monday morning in her penthouse, projecting the dashboard onto her ridiculously large television screen. Vivian sat on her designer couch like a queen on a throne, radiating contempt. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Category 1, Professional Development, Evan continued, ignoring her. Attending board meetings, participating constructively, completing assigned business training. 5 points per hour. I'm not going to business training. Category 2, Philanthropy. Hands-on volunteer work, and no, writing checks doesn't count. Physical labor, direct service. 10 points per session. You're insane. Category 3, Personal Responsibility. Making your own appointments, grocery shopping, cooking meals, basic life skills that normal humans possess. 3 points per task. I have people for that. Had people. Now you have accountability. He clicked to the next slide. Penalties. Rudeness to service workers, minus 20 points. Excessive spending, minus 10. Showing up late, minus 5. Each week you're also assigned community projects. Refusal means total point reset to 0. She stood abruptly. You can't be serious. Completely serious. Your starting balance is 0. Your car, your private credit cards, your party invitations, all locked until you hit 50 points. Want them back? Earn them. My father will never allow this. Evan pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. Brooks, Richard Ashford's voice crackled through. Status. Explaining the system to Miss Ashford. She seems to think you'll override the restrictions. A pause. Then, Vivian, are you listening? Father, this is ridiculous. You have 2 choices. Participate in Mr. Brooks's program, or I cut off your accounts entirely and you figure out rent like normal people. Your call. The line went dead. Vivian stared at the phone like it had personally betrayed her. When she looked back at Evan, her eyes were bright with fury, and something else. Fear, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding that this wasn't a game she could win by simply refusing to play. I hate you, she said quietly. Noted. Minus 5 points for verbal hostility. He smiled. Don't worry. You can earn them back tomorrow. You're volunteering at a food bank. The hell I am. 8 a.m. Dress for manual labor. And Miss Ashford. He packed up his laptop. You might want to set an alarm. Lateness costs points you can't afford. He left her standing there, silhouetted against her floor-to-ceiling windows, surrounded by luxury she could no longer access, facing a future that suddenly required effort. It was, he reflected on the elevator ride down, one of the more satisfying moments of his life. Chapter 6. Vivian didn't show up at the food bank at 8 a.m. Evan arrived early, coffee in hand, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, the kind of practical clothing she'd probably never owned. The South Austin Community Kitchen was a no-frills operation, industrial kitchen, stacked pallets of donations, volunteers in hairnets and aprons bustling with purpose. It smelled like garlic, canned tomatoes, and honest work. By 8:15, he'd confirmed her absence with the manager. By 8:30, he'd updated the points dashboard, starting balance, 0, lateness penalty, minus 10. No show, minus 20. Current total, minus 30. He spent the morning sorting produce and packing meals anyway. It felt good, productive in a way corporate interviews never had. His phone buzzed midway through with a text from an unknown number. Vivian, this is war. Evan, noted. Your car privileges are now suspended until plus 50. Enjoy the bus. He half expected a barrage of rage. Instead, silence. Which was somehow more ominous. She retaliated that afternoon. Evan was back at Ashford Tower, reviewing her financials in a borrowed office, when his phone exploded with notifications. Gossip sites, Twitter trends, Instagram stories, all featuring photos of him from Friday night. Someone had dug up his LinkedIn, his college photos, even a high school debate team picture. Mystery man controlling Ashford Heiress. From jobless grad to Vivian's keeper, what's his angle? Gold digger or genius? The Brooks takeover. The comments were vicious, class-climbing leech. Manipulative creep. Bet he's sleeping with her for the payout. Evan's stomach twisted. He'd expected pushback, but not this, a full-scale character assassination launched from her penthouse. His phone rang. Richard. Publicity stunt? Richard asked, voice dry. Her opening salvo, Evan confirmed. She's trying to make me the villain so you'll fire me. Handle it. Evan spent the next hour crafting a response, not defensive, but deflective. He posted a single photo to the shared Ashford socials, himself at the food bank that morning, captioned volunteering where it matters. Points earned, plus 15. Miss Ashford's total, minus 30. Progress is a choice. The internet flipped. Supporters emerged, finally, someone holding her accountable. Love this energy. Her old party crowd turned on her. Viv, what happened to you? By evening, Vivian called. He let it ring twice before answering. You humiliated me, she hissed. You started it. And for the record, facts aren't humiliation. You're ruining my life. No, Vivian. I'm giving you one worth living. Show up tomorrow. 7 a.m. Soup kitchen prep shift. Or it gets worse. She hung up. But at 6:55 the next morning, a cab pulled up outside the kitchen. Vivian stepped out in yoga pants, oversized sunglasses, and an expression of pure murder. Points for punctuality, Evan said mildly, handing her an apron. Let's see if you can earn more. She glowered through 4 hours of peeling potatoes, but didn't quit. By the end, her hands were raw, her makeup ruined, and something in her posture had shifted, less princess, more person. Dashboard update, plus 25 for attendance, plus 10 for completion, minus 5 for attitude. New total, 0. Progress. Chapter 7. Vivian's rebellions grew creative. Week 2, she threw an approved charity brunch, but filled it with influencers snapping selfies instead of donors. Evan crashed it with a microphone. Actual donations go to the foundation, not your feeds. Real impact over likes. He auctioned her designer handbag on the spot for $15,000 to a legit cause. Points, minus 40 for misuse of event, plus 30 for net proceeds. Week 3, maxed out a secondary credit card on a private jet to Vegas. Evan remotely froze at mid-airport. She spent the night in economy, fuming beside chatty retirees. Upon return, forced budgeting seminar. Points, minus 75, recovered via 3 days of financial literacy homework. Week 4, invited paparazzi to expose him as abusive. He showed up with her father. Richard took one look at the circus and said, Vivian, if you want attention this badly, earn it productively. Front page headline shifted to, Ashford Heiress in family intervention. Points, minus 60, plus 20 for father's praise. Their daily debriefs became verbal sparring matches, sharp, intelligent, laced with reluctant respect. You're insufferable, she'd snap over coffee he'd forced her to brew herself. Productive discomfort builds character, he'd counter. Plus 5 for making decent espresso. One evening, after a particularly grueling volunteer day at a women's shelter, she collapsed onto the penthouse couch, her couch, now that she'd earned basic privileges back. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Really? Evan paused in the doorway. Because I see potential in you. The kind you could do real good with. And because. He hesitated. Someone did it for me once. When I needed it. She looked at him, really looked, for the first time. Who? My mom. Single parent, 3 jobs. But she made me track chores, grades, goals. No handouts. Said potential unused was the real poverty. Vivian's expression softened. Mine just gave me cards. Silence stretched, heavy with unspoken things. Then, don't get soft on me now, Brooks. Minus points for sentimentality. He laughed. Plus 10 for honesty. We're even. Chapter 8. Months in, the transformation accelerated. Vivian restructured a failing Ashford community project, turning it profitable and impactful. She learned staff names at the food bank, remembered birthdays, advocated for raises. Her wardrobe shifted, less couture, more practical chic. Late nights out became early mornings in boardrooms. The points dashboard glowed green, total, plus 1,247. Tier, full privileges restored plus bonus autonomy. But success bred scrutiny, for Evan. puppet master or savior, screamed tabloids. Class warrior blogs called him a traitor to his roots. Old classmates messaged, selling out to the elite. Worse, anonymous tips to recruiters painted him as unstable, controlling. When reporters ambushed them post-gala, "Vivian, is he your boyfriend or your jailer?" Evan braced for her to throw him under the bus. Instead, she stepped forward, voice steel. "Evan Brooks isn't controlling me, he's the first person who treated me like I could handle the truth. If that's a crime, lock me up with the accountable." Flashbulbs exploded. The crowd parted. In the limo, she turned to him, eyes shining. "Did I earn points for that?" He smiled slowly. 100. And change. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. Chapter 9. It hit like a storm, Ashford subsidiary fraud. $20 million siphoned, SEC investigation looming, stock plunging. Richard was trapped overseas in tense merger talks. Evan and Vivian commandeered the war room, whiteboards, laptops, cold pizza. Days blurred, 4 a.m. strategy sessions, 2 a.m. confessionals over vending machine coffee. "You're good at this," she murmured one dawn, head on his shoulder amid spreadsheets. "You're catching up," he replied, arm around her instinctively. Exhaustion stripped defenses. Stories spilled, his scholarship struggles, her lonely galas masking parental neglect. Laughter over shared absurdities. Touches lingered, fingers on wrists, knees brushing under tables. The almost kiss came after victory, fraud exposed, culprits arrested, company saved. Penthouse balcony, city lights below. Thunder rumbled. "I was wrong about you," she whispered. "No," he said softly, thumb tracing her jaw. "You were right to fight. Made you stronger." Lips inches apart. She pulled back, breathless. "Earned it first." He grinned. Challenge accepted. Chapter 10. Vivian's announcement stunned high society, quitting vanity pursuits for Ashford Foundation CEO. Self-funded, merit-based. Evan tendered resignation. Mission accomplished. "Richard, she'll fight you on that." She did. Penthouse confrontation turned confession, "You think I'll let you walk? After you rebuilt me." "I didn't rebuild you." "You did." "Then stay. As partner. Equals." The kiss was fire, slow, earned, devastating. Epilogue. 1 year later, Texas Hill Country Estate. Vows exchanged under oaks. Cake topped with a golden points ledger, Evan, infinity. Vivian, infinity. Love, immeasurable. Vivian's toast, to the system that started as chains, and became our compass. Evan, 50-50 forever. Richard beamed. Rain fell softly outside, blessing, not curse. From collision to completion, points tallied, hearts balanced, love infinite.